You're all very welcome to this holy place. This hallowed ground, this corner of a Dublin garden that is forever Ireland.
Our MC for today will be Pat Butler. Pat is a veteran broadcaster and investigative journalist whose radio and television career across 4 decades include film documentaries on the founding of our republic, including documentaries on Ballyseedy, Kilmichael, the RIC and the Irish who fought in the Great War.
This monumental setting is a fitting place of remembrance for that few, that happy few, that band of Republican and Socialist brothers and sisters whose story we teach our sons and daughters, so that Easter Monday shall never go by from now to the ending of the world, but that those who stood for the Republic near here on that day and in the ensuing War of Independence shall be remembered. Foggy Dew is undoubtedly one of the greatest of all the 1916 ballads and is performed for us now by that brilliant first-year student teacher from St. Pat's in Drumcondra, a wonderful singer, Ruby O'Kelly.
Hands down like that, one needs to know to a city fair. There are nights of marching men in squadrons passing by. No pipe did hum nor battle drum did sound his loud tattoo, but the Angelus bells or the leafy smells rang out in the foggy June. Right proudly high in Dublin town, long day out the flag of war. 'Twas better to die 'neath an Irish sky than at Sogla or Silva. And from the plains of royal Meath, strong men came hurrying through, while Britannia's Huns with their long-range guns sailed in through the foggy June. Their bravest fell, and the requiem bell rang mournfully and clear. For those who died that Eastertide in the springing of the year. But the world did gaze with deep amaze at those fearless men, but few who bore the fight that freedom's light might shine through the foggy June. And back through the glen I rode again, and my heart with grief had sore. For I and I kneel and pray for you. For slavery fled, how glorious death, when you fell in the Foggy Dew.
Now, in the pantheon of Irish Olympic gold medal champions, the achievement of Kellie Harrington is quite simply non-parallel. There is no comparison. Kellie is, and remains, the only Irish woman to have won back-to-back Olympic gold medals in her chosen sport in successive Olympics. A feat previously hardly dreamt of by any Irish woman in any sporting endeavour. But this young woman from Portland Row in the north inner city round the corner here is far more than a consummate athlete. Is there a more down-to-earth beacon of authenticity and integrity among us? It is therefore a single honour to be here today to witness on behalf of all of us children of the nation, be we cherished or uncherished, to witness the laying down the gauntlet of the Proclamation one more time.
Proclamation, the provisional government of the Irish Republic, to the people of Ireland. Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. Having organised and trained her manhood through her secret revolutionary organisation, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizens Army, having patiently perfected her discipline, having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself, she now seizes that moment, and supported by her exiled children in America and by gallant allies in Europe, but relying in the force on her own strength, she strikes in full confidence of victory. We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies to be sovereign and indefeasible. The long usurpation of that right by a foreign people and government has not extinguished the right, nor can it ever be extinguished, except by the destruction of the Irish people. In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty. 6 times during the past 300 years, they have asserted it in arms, standing on that fundamental right and again asserting it in the arms in the face of the world. We hereby proclaim the Irish Republic as a sovereign independent state, and we pledge our lives and the lives of our comrades in arms to the cause of its freedom and of its welfare and of its exaltation among the nations. The Irish Republic is entitled to and hereby claims the allegiance of every Irish man and Irish woman. The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares to resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation of all its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally and oblivious of the differences carefully fostered by alien governments which have divided a minority from the majority in the past. Until our arms have brought the opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent national government, representative of the whole people of Ireland and elected by the suffrages of all her men and women, by the provisional government hereby constituted, will administer the civil and military affairs of the Republic in trust for the people. We place the cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God, whose blessing we invoke upon our arms, and we pray that no one serves that cause will dishonour it by cowardice, inhumanity, or a pin. In the supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called. Signed on behalf of the Provisional Government, Thomas J. Clark, Sean McDermott, P.H. Pearce, James Connolly, Thomas McDonough, Eamon Kent, Joseph Plunkett. Thank you.
Well, just like the 46A and the 79A and the 16 buses of old, they come and choose, they do, the great international sports stars this morning. Back in 1985, when a young 19-year-old took to the field in Arsenal for Highbury, not many watching would have known that an even younger version of that young man had hurled brilliantly for Dublin in Croke Park some 2 years earlier in the minor. And from those early beginnings, Niall Quinn progressed to become one of the finest Irish professional footballers of his generation. His achievement in the sport, on and off the field, needs no summary from me, because we all carry it burned into our hearts, etched as it is in the collective race memory. But there's more than hurling and football to this man. Challenged by his wife Gillian some years back to follow her lead in return to formal education, Niall Quinn researched and delivered a magnificent master's degree treatise on Oscar Traynor, the forgotten man in a way, with what another true voice of this city, historian Liz Gillis, describes as, and I quote, a stunning piece of work. Traynor commanded the Dublin Brigade of the Irish Republican Army in the War of Independence. A lifelong soccer aficionado, he was president of the FAI and held various ministerial portfolios in successive Éamon de Valera governments, pre, during and post-war. Now, Niall's love of Irish history prompted the 1916 Relatives Association to invite him to address us today as our guest commemorative speaker. Purigi Fáilte na Féile ó Crí, Ribam Traynor Head. Niall Quinn.
Cumann Gaeilge, Néadaig Séadaig, the Relatives of 1916 Association and distinguished guests. It's a great honour to be asked here today to speak to you all. I've been thinking about it from the moment I said yes, and very nervously during the week I was wondering and thinking about how we now live in an Ireland which has changed so fast that our own children can scarcely believe that we grew up without the internet, without mobile phones, and without being bombarded by distractions. Our kids don't remember an Ireland that had phone books. Our pizza was new and exciting, and there was a rule that everybody had to watch the Late Late on a Friday night. That's when I grew up. And coming up O'Connell Street this morning as I walked up here, I recalled a date I had as a gangly teenager. I was meeting a girl from the north side, and where do Southsiders meet girls from the north side or vice versa? Outside Cleary's under the clock. And I'd met her at table tennis in the community games, and we agreed a date. And I got there, only she didn't turn up. And I was left in the lurch, so to speak. I thought, what do I do? How long do I stay? And while the humiliation was there, I was thinking about it this morning. How long do you stay before you're really humiliated? And then I started to look across the road at the GPO, and 1916 came into my head. And immediately, on thinking about this girl, or thinking about 1916, I had no phone, I couldn't text, where are you, hun? Kiss, 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 question mark. What's up, lol? I couldn't do that. So what else could I do? I just had to stop and think about what happened, had gone around me, exactly where I was being stood up. There I was, stuck in my thoughts. And what came to my mind? Easter 1916. And Oscar Traynor, as you probably know now, is a bit of a hero of mine. At the very spot I was being stood up, he spoke about it. And I quote, "I saw the huge plate glass windows of Cleary's stores running molten into the channel from the terrific heat." And that's when he and his fellow members of the Volunteers Dublin Brigade 2nd Battalion were escaping the adjacent burning Metropole Hotel to go into the GPO to further help Pierce Connolly and their brave comrades. Time moved more slowly in these days. That's why I remember that. The memories now are more vivid. You know why? Because we stopped then to experience things more fully. Ireland has changed radically between my youth and today than it did in the years between 1916 and when I left for England in 1983. We live now in a world that goes around us at such speed that we haven't got time for anything. There are distractions being fired at us continually, things bad and different being hurtled at us, bombarded. Our concentration spans are shot. If something isn't on the mobile phone, it doesn't exist these days. And if it is, well, it's forgotten when the next 100 things come whirtling past you. So, for us to be here today, to take some time to look back and to try and understand the heroism that runs through your DNA, your bloodlines, and to take time to talk about the epic sacrifices your relations made for us, the dreams they dreamt for us to do that means we have to be still for a while. Let me make my take on it clear. The men and women of 1916 didn't make their sacrifices in order for future generations of this country to make up their own self-serving versions of what they did and why they did it. For me, the only thing I can be certain of is that all those who answered the call on Easter Sunday, 1916, and the week afterwards came from all parts and all persuasions of the country. There wasn't a single vision, no great unifying motivation other than to be free from colonialism. Freedom was the immediate problem, sending them back to their own garden next door. Nobody in 1916 knew what a future Ireland would look like. How could they? Nobody knew the divisions that would happen, the groups which would form on either side of the national argument. Nobody knew how those sides would harden and calcify in their attitudes. Nobody knew the influences that Ireland would be subjected to. Nobody knew how the world would change and what pressures that would exert on the people of Ireland. When we remember, we can't put the heroes of 1916 into one big homogenous bunch who all thought the same and who were all signed up to a long-term vision. Then I think we will truly honour their heroism. What we should do instead is honour their differences and respect how they overcame them. There's an RTE archive interview from 1965. It's with James Connolly's second daughter, Nora. You may well have seen it. She talks very movingly of her father's death and those famous words of her mother, Lily, when Connolly told her of his pending execution. "Your beautiful life," she weeps. "Hasn't it been a full life, Lily?" he said. "And isn't this a good end?" All the lives we remember here today, leaders, rank and file volunteers, all had their own beauty and their own end. But each was different and each was unique. Earlier in that interview, Nora remembers in the very early hours of Easter Sunday morning, the leaders of the Rising arriving in a small room in Liberty Hall. They were having breakfast, eating bacon and eggs, supping tea thoughtfully, before they went out into the dawn of history through the Foggy Dew. Listening to her describe those characters, you realise how diverse and unique each was. For instance, the Ireland Connolly foresaw was different than the one Pierce dreamed of. Connolly was inspired by the Paris communes of 1871, Pierce by the rebellion of 1798 and the Fenians. When he wrote his Proclamation of the Irish Republic, Pierce was inspired by Robert Emmet's Proclamation document of 1803. As you just heard, he wrote of religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all children and citizens, cherishing the children of the nation equally. He urged obliviousness towards the differences that had divided a minority from the majority. It was a big picture that Pierce drew when he spoke that Easter Sunday morning just down the road at the GPO. And of course, beyond Connolly and Pierce, there were other many differences, as many as there were volunteers. Oscar Traynor ended up in the GPO beside Connolly. He was a soccer man, as were other rebels. He stood in the GPO with Connolly from Edinburgh, fighting for the same cause as Countess Markievicz and Sir Roger Casement. But also, the same cause as rope maker Edward Cosgrave from Lower Dominic Street, artificial limb maker Jake Owens from the Coombe, master silversmith George Reynolds from Redmond's Hill, the three Cooney sisters, Anne, Lily and Eileen from Usher Quay, Bridget Brady from Liberty Hall, Nora Daly, who was in the GPO, and many, many others. All great different people with different ideals, but one goal. News of a rebellion spread around the country at that fateful time. After much uncertainty, it was on. The rising was happening after all. Ordinary men and women left their homes and went out to sacrifice for a greater cause. When people try and tell us with certainty that this or that is definitely not what the men and women of 1916 fought or died for, they do these men and women a great disservice. We cannot presume to know what they each dreamed of this Ireland of ours becoming. Nobody knew what would be left when the fighting was over. The only thing we can draw with from certainty is their spirit. The proclamation ends with that rallying call. The Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice for themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called. But I believe those stirring words and the example of the people who lived them are the absolute best clue we have for what the 1916 rebels might have wanted us to become. Free of colonialism, of course, certainly, but proud, confident, and a generous nation too. The proclamation tells me that they would have hoped for us to be a country and a people that treats others the way we'd like to be treated ourselves. They would want us to be willing to sacrifice ourselves for the common good. And indeed, if I can steal or paraphrase from one who we sometimes claim as our own, I'm sure they would want us to ask what we could do for Ireland, not what Ireland can do for us. That's the spirit that was handed down. And by remembering those who fought and fell, that's the spirit I think we have to honour. Would Pearse, Connolly, Markovich, Traynor, the rank and file soldiers, would they all have engaged in long abusive arguments on text? Would they have been unable to see the common good as we are today? Of course not. They would expect us to be bigger, more confident, more generous, wiser people, more independent in thought, more creative in our expressions of Irishness. They would not have wanted us to be a nation of compliant lapdogs. When all those men and women left their homes in 1916, not knowing if or when they would return, they were united by that bigger, more generous dream of Irishness. What we all love about what they did that week was their confidence. The misunderstanding as well that the rising was going to take place didn't help. And the gun-running exploits beforehand hadn't really brought enough weapons that the rising might have expected to achieve. Yet those brave souls went out and did what they believed had to be done and what needed to be done. They left their homes because they refused to leave that job to others. Some died. Many were mocked by their fellow citizens as they were shipped off to Frongoch. Many were bereaved, lost family, friends and comrades as well as their leaders. And many returned home to be out of a job. But they persisted. They were part of a chain of revolutions which at the beginning were inspired by the Enlightenment, a European intellectual and philosophical movement that spanned in the late 17th century. They inspired the Americans inspired the French, and the French do revolutions more stylishly. They formed the tricolour and we copied that. And indeed, our tricolour went on itself to inspire so many other countries. Indeed, after the rising of 1916, it encouraged men and women from the Bolsheviks in Russia to South Africa, Tanzania, and the emerging nationalists in India. Our 1916 rebels added greatly to the tide of history, and viewed in that global context, we can certainly feel proud of them all. When I was much younger, thinner than I am today too, I was lucky enough to be part of an Irish football team that represented Ireland in the World Cup in 1990. I sometimes feel like Con Houlihan, the great sports writer, who said, I missed Italia 90 because I was out there at the football. You're all probably looking at me and thinking, hang on, this fella's running away with himself. He's going to tell us he was a martyr for Ireland too. I'm not. Can I clarify, I was only playing football. I got sunburned for Ireland that summer. I'm not comparing myself to the men and women in 1916 who fought and died for Ireland. The point I want to make is that for a long time afterwards, people in Ireland talked about those few weeks in the summer of 1990. In fact, they still do. The joy, the pride, the celebration. I think all of us who are old enough to remember that time see it as a bit of a turning point for us in terms of confidence that we Irish took from acquitting ourselves well, or fairly well, on the international stage. How come? Well, it had been a long road after the Civil War. We were isolated for a long time, particularly during the war. There was an inferiority complex nationally, and we were ravaged by recession, unemployment, and emigration. And we were still fighting in the 6 counties. And then one summer, a bunch of us who were lucky enough to play in half the country, who begged, stole or borrowed, headed off to Italy. We were led by a gruff Englishman who'd won a World Cup with them that we didn't like, but we liked him. And in 1990, that team that I was part of, and lucky to be a part of, we were a mix of fellas with Cockney accents, Scousers, Scots, Brummies, a couple of black Irish, GAA refugees, a big quiet lad from Donegal, a mad physio and an ageless kit man who's still alive, was born 7 years after the Rising. But something happened to those country in those few weeks. Differences didn't matter anymore. We scored a couple of goals, got into a few scrapes. It was famously said that we gave the Pope a chance to have an audience with Jack Charlton, and we got to a quarter-final. And we even made an honorary Irishman out of Toto Scalacci, recently deceased. That's how nice a nation we were. He scored a winner against us and we made him an honorary Irishman. We were nice, but we were mad, but it was a nice mad. And when it was over, it was just football that had made us confident about ourselves, but it helped us to believe in ourselves. By being good at what was once the band garrison game, we began to feel that this country was doing okay. Looking back, it was innocent, but I think the men and women of 1916, if they were watching, peeping down, I think they might have caught a glimpse of something that they liked. A country happy in its skin and confident, taking its place in the modern world. But I'm sure they'd hoped that more of us would stop and be still and remember their sacrifice and their generosity, honour their wish for an Ireland that would simply be independent and not beholden to the manoeuvres of other nations or power brokers. And they tell us to put the stupid phones down and talk to each other and expand on the vision as they did. And if fellas started complaining about dates that turned up, I'm sure they'd say shut up and get on with it. So I'm going to shut up now, because that's what I think you and the men and women of 1916 would probably want at this point. To you, the Eastern 1916 relatives, I really want to thank you for having me here today. And I offer you the last word, os Gaeilge. Maran an crave an vol op ni varan an love the core. The branch thrives on the hedge, though the hand that planted it be gone. Please continue to thrive in your quest to remember the heroes of 1916 properly, and may God bless you all. Thanks.
We led the way in 1916, and the rest of the subjugated nations who chose to do so followed.